1925, except for a very large polygamous house, that's
Oh,
vinyl.
oh, vinyl siding. Oh, vinyl siding. Oh, good. Well, fine. Terrific. Very
Yeah.
good. Very good. You'll have fun. Oh, let me see. Who's this? This might be Jerry Koski.
Hi there.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Yes, fine. How are you?
Oh, good.
Good. I think Linda knows you better than I do, I think. So, yeah. Oh, good. Well, thank you for tuning in.
Well, thank you for having the webinar.
Yeah. This is Angie Abrams here, and she did the work on the house. It was the blacksmith's house, right? The Minter. Yeah. So it's going to be
Yes,
fun.
and I can affirm to that because we've found charcoal and pieces of metal that would have come from a blacksmith shop around the house.
Yeah. Yeah. That must have been fun and exciting to see and find there,
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I kind of knew about it beforehand, but I was kind of excited when I started finding those pieces of charcoal stuff that came out of the forge.
Yeah.
And then pieces of metal that had been heated, and just scraps. But we're in the process of doing some remodeling on the inside of that old house and try to update it a little bit. And it's been in my family since about 1953 or 4.
Yeah.
And I keep it as a rental, but I'm going to update it a little bit, get it fixed up more, modernize it a little bit more. So not change the outside.
Right.
Anything to do to the outside integrity of it, just the inside.
Yeah.
And I don't know about the designations with the city and with the state and what the rules and regulations are, what we can or can't do or should or shouldn't do, ma'am.
Yeah. Well, Linda Toll, who just joined us, knows Jerry too. Is that right, Linda? Or
Yes.
his wife?
No, hi, Jerry.
Hey there.
Yeah.
You had another property that was included in an inventory way back when we started all this on East Montezuma, I think it was.
Yeah, I have a house at 510 East Montezuma.
Yeah.
But I think the last survey stopped at Harrison, so that house wasn't really included.
Well, we actually did go down to Kemper because that has National Register potential, but I looked it up today and your property was not considered eligible for the city register. So, but you've got one this time that is.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, it is. You're right, Jerry, that if it's okay if I call you Jerry. Anyway,
Certainly.
you're right. Just don't change anything on the outside, or restore it. And we can get the guy in Durango to help us with restoration of the ideas that you need. So we're archaeologists, but we can get someone to help. Yeah, but we can get someone to help so it looks like it did when it was old. So that's it.
We should mention that we're going to record tonight's session so that the other property owners who couldn't make it to Zoom can look at this when it gets posted on the city website. So we're going to talk about those sorts of questions at the end, Jerry, not to repeat ourselves, but just so that everybody that's going to hear this down the road will get a chance to hear.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Kelly.
Kelly.
Hi.
I don't think we've officially met, but when I saw your name in the paper for your new job, I thought, I bet I know her parents.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Pop. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Boy, this is the best Zoom I've ever been on. But we're waiting, I think, for Jason. Should we wait for Jason?
And Rachel, another
And-
property owner that
and
was said she was
Okay.
going to be part of it.
Okay.
And there she
There's
is.
Rachel. She's appeared. City of Cortez, it's Kyle. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, this is Kyle.
Okay.
He's going to be doing all the fancy stuff when we have to share the screen.
Okay. Okay. Well, one more. So Jason's the only one. And then we'll do some introductions first is the plan. And then Linda will give us a history of the Cortez Historic Preservation Board.
Quickly.
Quickly, yes, quickly. Yeah, we run kind of short meetings. I may rush too much, but we try to get them done. But I think we have to wait for Jason. What do you, should
Well,
we?
let's give him another minute. Neva,
Is it
did
6? Oh,
anybody
he-
else,
Has it been?
did anybody else say they were going to join us on Zoom?
No, nobody else did. So
Okay. Hi, Rachel.
Hi. How's
Hi.
everything?
We can hear you.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Can we see you?
Sure. Okay. I got to set that up.
I mean, it's okay.
In some respects, these meetings are much easier than dragging ourselves all to City Hall. But on the other hand, they can be frustrating because
Now, here's
it's
Jason.
not the usual. And there's Jason.
So we'll do our introductions. I'm Patricia Lacey, and I am the chairperson of the Cortez Historic Preservation Board. And we're just the board that takes care of historic preservation, and this grant is part of it. Okay, and then who else is on the board? We'll do that next. Linda?
I'm Linda Toll. I'm vice chairman of the Preservation Board.
Okay, and then staff, there's Tracy Hughes. Tracy, do you want to say hello? Did she block herself?
Hello, I was just unmuting. As you can see, I'm on Montezuma Avenue with a floating picture frame. Um,
Okay.
I'm the city planner and I'm here just to listen to the presentation tonight.
And
Hi,
Neva?
Tracy.
Okay, hi Tracy, it's Kelly.
all right.
Neva?
I'm Neva Conley, and I'm the associate planner with the city, and I'm staff to the Historic Preservation Board.
Okay. And then City of Cortez, where we have that is a background kind of thing. Let's see. And then Jason, from Woods Canyon? Yes?
Yep. Hi there, Jason Chupka, Principal Investigator for Woods Canyon Archaeological Consultants based here in Cortez, Colorado. And yeah, we are the basically the contractor for the project. And that's where we bring Angie Abram into the picture.
Okay, Angie?
Hi, I'm Angie Abram, and I'm the architectural historian who did the survey
Yes.
for Woods Canyon.
Very grateful. Okay, and then our special guest, Kelly.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. So Kelly Koski, and it's your dad's house that's eligible.
Yes, it's actually my great grandparents' house that's eligible.
Okay. Oh, good. And Jerry, Jerry Koski, who is your dad, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. We had a little talk about a blacksmith shop before, but okay, Jerry?
Yeah.
Do you want to say hi, Jerry?
You want me to say hi again?
Yeah, say hi again.
Hi again.
Hi again. Okay, good. All right. And Rachel, are you still there? she's getting something. Oh, my.
Hi.
Oh, that's
Yay.
a smile. Okay,
Oh, wow.
all
Sorry,
right.
I don't have the best technology. Rachel Medina, my house is one that'll be talked about tonight.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, did I manage to introduce everybody and everybody said hi? Good. All right, now I'd like to have Linda will give us the history of the Cortez Historic Preservation Board, a brief history of why we're here and what we can accomplish. Okay, I can mute.
Okay, well, maybe Kyle can mute all of us except me. And hopefully he can take us to the city website, sharing his screen. I want everybody to know that the results of our inventory work is out on the city website. Kyle, are you able to share your screen?
No, that's going to be me, Linda. I'm going to be doing that.
Oh, all right. Okay.
And I just got it open too, so,
Okay.
okay.
So if you go on cityofcortez.com, which is of course the city's website, and you type in the search box, historic preservation. Can we show them? Yeah, here we go. Yay. Okay. So it's going to bring you to this page. And if we scroll down a bit more, oh, there we are. There's the search box. And there's the first page that talks about our board. And if we scroll down towards the bottom of that page. Okay, that's a good place to stop for the moment. In 2010, the city of Cortez became a certified local government. That title really doesn't tell you much, but it means that the city has a historic preservation ordinance that was developed in 1996 that meets the state and National Park Service guidelines for historic preservation. The Park Service is the federal agency that oversees all preservation programs in our country. The benefit of becoming a CLG is that we can apply for grants to conduct inventories. And we have been very successful. We've had 8 grants in the last 10 years. This particular grant that has funded the inventory that Angie's going to talk about was for $17,500. The best thing about these grants is they do not require any cash match. So it's free money, as I call it. So no city funds were expended on this. And the money actually comes from the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund. That is also not funded by federal tax money. It comes from offshore drilling. And therefore, that money from the East Coast underwater has made it all the way to Cortez, and we get to do historic property inventories. The grants are competitive at the state level, and we have been quite successful, as I already said. Here you will see up on the screen the results of these last 8 inventory projects. We have a podcast of our Montezuma Avenue walking tour brochure because we thought we should try to reach out to some younger audience. We have walking tour brochures for both Montezuma Avenue, Ash, and First Streets. And soon we'll put one up there for Main Street because Patricia will be giving a Main Street tour and a Montezuma Avenue tour on Historic Preservation Day, which will be May 22nd this year. Under historic surveys on the right side of the screen, you will see that we have done Montezuma Avenue. We started with the original town site and we've been working our way down to Main Street, south side of Main Street, and then tonight is, of course, our second inventory south of Main. We also have a PowerPoint presentation from the results of the 2019 survey because, of course, sort of like tonight, we could not meet in person at the end of that grant. So There's lots of information out there for anyone who's interested to go and take a look at these things. Now, if we kind of scroll back up to the top of that screen, Neva, further, there we go. Somewhere on there, oh, if you click on Historic Preservation Board, you will see the information about our board. We are an advisory board to City Council, obviously advising them about historic preservation issues. The purpose of the board is to educate our own citizens, our visitors about our history and historic preservation, to maintain a register of historic properties, and to advise property owners who have chosen to list their property on the register. We meet the first Wednesday of the month. Of course, we've been on Zoom for a while, but May we will actually be there in City Hall at 5 o'clock. You'll see the list of members. We have 7 members on the board. They represent various other organizations in town, including the Montezuma County Historical Society, and Patricia is our liaison to that board. We're all volunteers, and so we work as hard as we can. And we've made a fair amount of progress over the last 10 or 15 years. So now I would like to turn it over to Jason to talk a little bit about the inventory process, and then let Angie present her results of this last inventory.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted here. So this inventory is one in a series of historic inventories of the original town site of the city of Cortez. And the properties were all identified by the Cortez Historic Preservation Board as being potentially historically significant. And so this list of properties that were identified were also sort of fit to the scope of the grant, knowing that being able to record 22 or 23 properties fits within the scope of the monies available for the CLG grant. So over there's a series of surveys have been undertaken in the original town site of Cortez, recording a few dozen properties at a time. So this is the latest of those surveys. And so between the Cortez Historic Preservation Board and History Colorado and City of Cortez representatives, looking at this list of properties and determining which would be the most appropriate to record. And so that all kicked off with a public meeting. In the case of this project, I think it was really a letter sent out, and there was some notification due to COVID. As Linda mentioned, meetings in person have been a little bit challenging over the last year. So it's been alternatives of just notifying homeowners. And then really the methodology, Angie will go into a little more depth on this, but it's really starting at the Montezuma County Recorder's Office and then moving into the documentation of those properties. And it's a very specific level of documentation that's outlined in by the State Historic Preservation Office. There's a guide for historic architecture and how that's documented. And that really is a detailed description from the interior of identifying, describing the property, identifying any changes or additions, documenting the chronology of the property, also looking at aspects of historic integrity and significance to history. That's something that Angie will be discussing. And that's really talking about, is the property, does it still retain these values of integrity for the period that we're talking about? So if it was a house built in 1915, Does it still look like a 1915 house, or has it been subsumed by multiple additions or changes to the exterior? That affects aspects of integrity. There's a series of photographs and looking through historic records for historic photographs of properties. And then, of course, it's mapping them all in GIS, which both the city of Cortez and the state of Colorado, everything's documented in a geographic information system, which is a way of both spatial data and descriptive data for properties. And so that's become a standard over the last couple of decades. And of course, there's forms that are filled out for each of these properties that that document everything I was talking about. So there's a report that comes out summarizing all of the site forms, and the presentation that Angie's going to give tonight is a summary and overview of that report. So that's a little bit of the how and what. So if there's any questions, you can fire them off my way too.
So I guess, Angie, could you run through your PowerPoint and tell us what you discovered?
Okay, am I going to share my screen, or Neva, are you going to run the PowerPoint?
Angie, I'm not prepared to run the PowerPoint. I didn't pull
Okay,
it up.
I am. I'm good.
Okay, thanks.
Let me. Am I sharing my screen correctly?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to the very front of it. What am I doing at the end of the presentation? That was the rehearsal. Okay. Now that you've seen the entire presentation, we can all go home, right? No. This is a report of the survey. This is the 7th survey that we've done. Not me. This is the 2nd. I did First Street, and this is the 2nd Street one, plus all the in-between ones in the original plat, which is essentially 4th West to 250 East. This is a 23 survey. 23 historic properties were surveyed on this one, and you can see on the map of the old USGS topo map where that's at in the city. Just wow, east of the high school and around the old Calkin School. Close up with GIS footprints, so you can see the buildings, and primarily these were a lot of them were on the cross streets, not so many on 2nd Street. Here are all the addresses and the names and the construction dates. You'll see that some of these have 2 construction dates, and that typically is because they have been moved. That they were recorded prior by the Montezuma County recorder, and so they actually have dual dates in them, and so it's likely that that they were moved from somewhere else. So there are 5 of those. 4 of them are in the 40s, when a lot of houses were moved from McPhee. Jason already talked through all the methodology. So the preservation board identifying the properties, conduct assessments, blah, blah, you can read all that stuff. But I do the last bullet there, which is create an intensive level survey for each of those. And that's it. I identify any, what the original building looked like as far as I can tell into past history. I look at any changes or additions in a technical way. That's typically done by the old county assessor records, which aren't bad in Montezuma County. So old photographs there. They have all the evaluations that they've gone out and done periodically for all of the buildings. And then I also look at the ownership with the county recorder's office and show who owns the properties, and then evaluate the integrity, just as Jason was talking about, and recorded on 1403. And I'm hoping that the owners have gotten the copies of the reports. And this is just the kind of boilerplate of what the cultural resource evaluations are. So they use historic context, using property types and similar and associative characteristics. And then we use historic context, which basically group the resources into time periods and places. So, and then we evaluate them all for eligibility for the National Register, the Colorado State Register, and the Cortez City Register. And in my evaluation, they can be eligible, not eligible, or needs more information. And in these presentations in COVID, I started doing red, green, and yellow so that they're easy visual to be able to see for anybody and understand. So the one place that you can be list is on the National Register, and there was one property in this survey that was field eligible for the National Register on Market Street. The National Register is goes all the way through city, state, and it's administered by the National Park Service. Colorado State Register is similar, only it's obviously done by Colorado State, and it's a recognition of a property's importance in the history of the community in the state of Colorado. You can see the sense of pride, eligibility to compete for grants from their historical funds, possibly state tax credits, and limited protection from Colorado State itself. That's odd. But, and again, there are no restrictions imposed by History Colorado, nor the National Park Service about what private property owners do to their property. You know, typically the Federal Register the only restriction is if you take federal money, then you have to document things. So, but as a private homeowner, that has nothing to do with what you can do with your property. It's a local government regulation in all cases there. So, and then the Cortez City Register, which is an awesome place to recognize properties, is a little different. It does have to be 50 years old, but it only has to meet one of the architectural, social, or geographic environmental significance areas. So I only listed the architectural and social ones because that's basically what this survey is about. So specific architectural styles, work of an architect locally, nationally, or superior craftsmanship, a pattern or grouping of elements representing architecture, which is kind of the McPhee logging ones, events, people, notable people, and so Cortez is there. So let's go on to the results, and I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. I don't know that anyone wants to hear so much about all of them. I'll try to do the ones that we have homeowners in our Zoom meeting. So this is the survey area, Southside, and kind of what I found in the survey from a macro perspective. It's almost exclusively residential, with only the Charles Minter blacksmith shop as a commercial property. It's a lot of these lots were part of the water boom speculation that gripped Cortez right after the turn of the century. So when it was organized right at the turn of the century, things went along, but when everyone thought there were going to be large-scale agricultural projects, boomed. So two people bought up 100 lots or so in Cortez, and we're going to resell them as a speculative thing. One of them lasted 6 months, and the other lasted about 2 years because the boom didn't last. But a lot of the lots reverted back to the Cortez Land and Investment Company, but others ended up in the American Water Company, which was one of the creditors for the water projects. So these companies owned and more financed these lots over time. So they're in a really large part. You know, it's interesting because on First Street, that wasn't so. That we didn't see very much of that, but here, very much so. That they were part of the city that didn't develop and ended up in the bank, kind of. So most of them aren't developed till the 30s or 40s. And with the difficult economic times in agriculture in the United States, you know, Great Depression, they're typically more modest. They're not nearly as flashy as some. So 5 of the residences have been moved. 4 of them maybe McPhee, but that would require additional study. I wasn't able to document that and as a part of this survey. So 411 East First Street, which is an awesome house. I like it. An iHouse owned by Elmer Perkins, who lived there with his brother Lewis and his mom Elizabeth. Perkins Brothers livery transported people via horse and automobile from rail connections and local cities and distant cities. And with Cortez not having a local rail link, they were big business here. You know, they brought people and freight. So interestingly, it was the people who bought it after Elmer left in 1914. He only owned it 6 years. Were nearly as had nearly as much notoriety. Patrick J. O'Donnell, one of the first cattle ranchers in Mancos Valley in the 1870s, when the very first cattle herders came after the Civil War. He owned it. Johnny Brown and his wife Nora owned it. So it's a very awesome house. You can see on the top is my photograph, and on the bottom is the tax photograph. So you can kind of see, I did that in this survey so you can see what was. The survey photographs are between the 40s and the 60s typically. So any questions about 411 East First Street? All right. Now we're going to go west to east on 2nd Street. This is 313th West. This is a 1957 house. Noel Hadley and was there. He was a letter carrier and Lois was a telephone operator. I'm surprised at how many postal employees are in this survey, in case you need some really obscure data. So that's it. We have a lot of those drivers for the post office, postal postmasters. There you go. So Lois lived there until her death in 1996, and then June Brubaker owned it after that. 204 West. Abraham and Annie Immel constructed it in 1944 during World War II. They were farmers in Lewis and moved there at 58, so they didn't actually live there very long before they passed away. And then John and Ellen Hinton lived there. That one's been significantly altered. You can see from the tax photograph on the bottom, the original house is on the right, and it was a little shotgun house. And after Annie and Abe passed away, then the second part was added, and it's been added to again. So 138 West, nice little cottage. I like that one, and that actually has great integrity. Glenn Sylvia Ward constructed it around 1922. This one's difficult to find because this one was owned by the water company, and it looks like they financed it and didn't record the mortgage in Montezuma County. So the Foxes owned it for a lot of years, 52 to 86. So, and then Loris and Milton Finch owned it for quite some time. 9th West 2nd Street. This one's John and Betty Siebert in 1937. So lived there for only 2 years, and then sold it to the barber Herman, and I'm gonna probably mess that up. Amrine, am I getting that right?
Amrine.
Amrine. Okay, and you know, Hoyt Dow was a real estate, man in Cortez, and he's been on a lot of the properties. He's in this one too. So he purchased it and probably used it as a rental. And he owned it for 20 years. That when the roof line got altered a bit over time. 21 East 2nd Street is eligible for the Cortez Register. William H. Carlisle constructed that one circa 1927. It's still got pretty good integrity. And his daughter, Dorothy, owned it after William died. He didn't live for very long. I think 1939 or something. So, but she allowed her half siblings to live there until their death in 1947, and then she sold the property to Norris Robideau, who appears to have lost it, like didn't make the payments. And Robert Parga and James Harper, also developers in Cortez during that time, and they sold it eventually to Everett and Beverly Hamilton. 207 East 2nd Street is the first house that looked like it was likely moved. Montezuma County says it was constructed in 1921, and I will show you. Look carefully at the photograph of the house here, and you'll see that it's identical to 215 in the tax photos. And this tax photo was taken in 1946. Not a peep of vegetation. So it looks like that's very much when it was moved. So Hicks and Frankie Owenby owned this house bought it in 46, and they sold it to Minta Swanner in 1949. She owned it for a while. So I think that's eligible for the Cortez Register because of the McPhee connection. And it also has pretty good integrity, although the windows have been replaced. 215. So we go back, we go forth. Yep, same thing. No vegetation, no porch, well, little porch, not anything after it got moved. So 1934, even though it's an identical house, again, moved in 1946. So this is Leonard and Catherine Parker bought the house in 1946. And he was a grocery clerk and worked at COD Laundry. I had never heard of that one. So in 1960, Clyde and Dorothy Palmer bought the house, and they owned it till 2008. Now we go on to the cross streets in alphabetical order because that's how my computer saved them. So 126 Ash, constructed in 1932 by Jesse and Hannah Rowley. They owned it until 43 and sold it to the Molenskis, and James and Charlotte Major, who also were part of the one who owned, what is the house on it? Is it 217 East 1st Street? The Victorian house, yes. They own the same ownership, exactly the same ownership as that house, which is unusual. The Bradfields purchased it in 48 and owned it until 72. And of course, Floyd was the postmaster of Cortez. So here's our postal connection again, 39 and 62. So not only is it eligible architecturally, it's related to the Bradfields. 124 Chestnut Street is a very old house, unusually away from everything else, and you'll see it's got a kind of a Victorian look there in its original configuration. There's not much left that shows that. Just to the right, you can see that's the part that is the one you see in the survey photo or in the assessor's photo. Manuel Miera owned this house, lived in it from 35 until 92. So one long-term owner though. 127 South Elm Street. That was originally a pitched roof shotgun residence. It looks good now. I like it, but it doesn't look anything like it used to. So Pitts and Nina Pitzenberger bought the house in 46 and owned it until 91. So. And according to June, John and Esther Hobday were long-term renters there. She helped review some of these, and I always appreciate her help and experience in doing these evaluations for just knowledge about Cortez. 137 South Elm Street originally was built in 1912 by Mary and R.B. Wilson. And you can't see the actual part that was original is behind what you see. You can see the garage and the room addition on the front in the tax assessor photo on the bottom. So very old residence. And I think Mary Arby didn't live too long after the 1920s, but Mary lived there for many years. So after that, John and Gladys Levitt owned it. 117 South Linden. This was almost Cortez register material. It was built for a longtime mayor and Montezuma County Commissioner and City Councilman Robert Maines, who was also a long-term a pharmacist in Cortez. So super prominent and could be associated with him. Unfortunately, he moved over to Montezuma Avenue prior to any of that. So it's too bad. So, but Connie Orendorff owned the house for a long time. 129 South Linden Street, purchased by some of the teachers at the local school, Harold and Mildred Seaton, and they also boarded another one of the teachers. He was the assistant superintendent in the school district, and she was a teacher. In the Depression, they sold the property to Wilbur Freeman, who was the son of Ira Freeman. So that was an odd little thing. So, and also Nita Razor. So, and I've been around. It's a nice house as well. And we'll move on to Maple Street. This one's built in a lot of sections. Not a lot about this one, but Charlie Bowers owned the property and subdivided it and brought in a house next door at 124, 126 South Maple. So, but James and Opal Patton owned it between 56 and 80, if any of these names are doing anything for you. So 126 South Maple Street is eligible for the Cortez Register. And part of that has to do with the association with Charlie Bowers and also with Samuel and Sally James, who owned it for a long time. So 134 South. This one moved in 1940. Reconfigured it. It had a little gable end there. You can see on the assessment. So it's not so. Ore and Florence Bennett owned the property, and Ruby and Robert Banks owned it for quite a few years as well. Now we're on to Market Street, some of the funner ones, because these are much older houses. Market Street was developed contemporarily with the town, original town and the boom. So Stephen J. Smith, he was an early settler, and he was accountant for the ditch company. He was on the board of directors for Montezuma Valley Irrigation. And he sold it in 1922 to Georgia Maggie Lee, who lived there until 1950. Hoyt Dow, again, real estate, purchased it in 56. But he actually transferred ownership to his son, David and Ruth, and they owned the house. I don't think they lived there. I think they used it as a rental. But it's got pretty good integrity, except for that right side window, which is might be more than 50 years old, but it's certainly not like the 40s photograph. 114 South Market Street is a fun building too. I'm sad about the vinyl siding, but it was constructed in 1907, according to Montezuma County assessor. And it's likely that it was the residence of the original newspaper publisher in Cortez on Main Street. So it was relocated to 44 South Market Street, and it was owned by Mattie Glover, who was the wife of blacksmith Daniel, and I'm going to say that wrong too, Shop, who lived or who had the blacksmith shop that I actually studied last year at 22 East First Street. So in 1978, though, Kay Vandover moved that house from Market Street over to here. So that's even though it's a prehistoric house, that's less than 50 years. So still from the move. So that's an issue for integrity, certainly as well as the vinyl siding. But that's a cool house. 123 South Market Street. This one's originally constructed as a blacksmith shop in 1908 by Charles Minter. And Charles Minter is one of the very first settlers in Cortez, 1887. Ira Freeman actually identifies him by name. So he operated a blacksmith shop, and he actually left for a few years and came back in 1908, built the blacksmith shop and was operating it, and looked like he lived in the back there where the residence still exists. And I think it would be if Jerry and I'm gonna, since I don't have Patricia, what was it? Who's the other Kosky there? Who was
Kelly.
Kelly? Sorry, I only have a little screen because I've got the slides up. I would be happy to send the all of the information from the assessor, because they have a pretty good file with all of the how it was laid out and everything and which parts were when. So that's good. But Charles Minter left there in living there in 1917 and moved next door to 131 South Market Street. And then in about 1930, it looks like he stopped being a blacksmith and was actually doing eggs, so chickens. So after Charles Minter passed away in 1939, his son, who never lived in Cortez, lived in like Michigan, sold the property to Hoyt Dow. So, and that's it. And he sold it and Hoyt Dow sold it to H.D. and Edna Robbins, who must be great-grandparents and grandparents. There we go. So 1941 was when the blacksmith shop was demolished. It's got good integrity though. 131 South is Charles Minter's second home. He lived there for about 13 years. And after his, or excuse me, not 13 years. He lived there, 13 years until the census when he was moved over to Maple Street. And then it transferred to Effie Scott. And it doesn't look like she lived there, but Hoyt Dow again did it. And then Isla Olson owned the property after 74. It has good integrity from that time as well. 137 South. This is Dr. H.C. Beal, who was one of the first physicians and surgeons in Montezuma County, and he was the coroner, elected coroner. Unfortunately, he died in 1913. And then the property was owned by the Gillettes, and they sold it to Samuel Burke. So, and Samuel actually is in his own right, his great historical figure. So he's the Montezuma County clerk and recorder for 16 years. And then Mary Lamb owned it for many years. I don't know who she is. So, and then 144 South Market, the one that was eligible for the National Register, constructed in 1906 for Jesse and Anna West. So one of the earliest residents of McElmo Canyon. Anna owned the property until 1933 and then sold it to Lee Tripp, who operated a title company. And then in 1945, Ray and Anna Patton purchased the house and owned it until 1986. So Ray was a judge, elected a couple of times, and then he died, and Anna was elected Montezuma County judge after his death. So good integrity, nice design, and field eligible for the National Register. All right, that was it for my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you. Okay. All right, I guess we have one more thing. Are there any questions to Angie right now?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So on mine, it was the 411 East First Street. I think the first house you did.
Yeah.
It looked like for the state registry, did you have needs more information?
Yes.
Okay, so what could I do, or who could help me? I guess get on that registry?
Well,
or
I'm-
figure out how I'm eligible.
Yeah, Linda.
Yeah, well, let me talk a little bit about what comes next. For those of you that are here tonight and other owners, I think I know who the owner of the National Register eligible property is as well, so maybe we can get some more action going. But Neva, if you could share the screen again with the City of Cortez and show our city register.
Linda,
Yes,
did you hear Rachel's question?
yes, I'm going to get to that in just a sec.
Okay.
Neva, can you share the screen with the list of city register on it? It's somewhere in there. Well, what I want to show you is the properties that are currently listed on the local register, because certainly Rachel and Jerry, your properties are eligible for the local register, and that's the place to start. What you will see when it comes up is that, there it is, local register. It's not much to look at, I have to say, it's just a spreadsheet. But I want you to see that we have 53 buildings that are listed on the local register. I don't think it popped up, Neva.
Okay, it's up on my screen. I think I have to switch screens on this one. So
I'm
one second.
Okay, well, anyway, it's out there. You can check it out later yourself. There are 53 buildings that have been listed on the city register. Many of these are a result of our inventory. There it is. See, it's just a plain old spreadsheet. But you will see that there are many there on Main Street. And if you look over to the columns on the other side, you'll see the state site number that was assigned and which ones are eligible for the state register and eligible for the national register. A lot of the properties that we inventoried at the beginning on Montezuma Avenue are listed on here. And if you keep scrolling down, you'll see that we have one historic site, and that is the median on Montezuma Avenue. Everyone thinks that Montezuma Avenue is a historic district, but only the median has been listed. We have attempted to make a district there, and we may try again. But the property owners on Montezuma wanted the median listed because at the far west end of Montezuma, you know that that's all parking now where the median used to be. And they came to the board in 2000 and said, we want to preserve that green median down the middle because that was a major characteristic when Montezuma Avenue was laid out. It was supposed to bring irrigation water, but that never happened. But it's just a very lovely addition. We also have one archaeological site, which is the Hawkins Preserve in the south end of the city, managed by the Cortez Cultural Center. And on the very last page, we have 4 historic signs. And the board was created in order to save these signs when new zoning went in for properties along Main Street. The Tomahawk, you'll see that it's Cork and Bottle, the Fiesta Theater, and 2 of our historic hotels. The Tomahawk Lodge has on its marquee that it is a historic site. So hopefully, eventually we'll get around to inventory it and it will really get listed. Okay, so Angie, that's fine, Neva, thank you. So Angie ran through the criteria for listing, and we have 14 properties out of this inventory that are eligible to be listed on the city register. Everyone was sent a letter with, according to your list, everyone was sent a letter invited to tonight, but they were also sent their state site form with Angie's write-up on the history and the architecture. And if the property was eligible for the city register, you were also sent an application form. So Rachel, to answer your question, and for Jerry as well, the first step is to get your property listed on the city register. Now, that application, there's that application form that was sent with you, you simply have to fill out, make another copy of the state site form, and bring it back or mail it back to Neva or Tracy at City Hall. We would like those applications back by May 14th so that we can combine them all, and Neva and Tracy will take them to City Council for approval. City Council has always accepted our recommendation, so if you get your application form in, I don't think there will be a problem. Rachel probably will have to recuse herself this time. But
So
once
I have a
Yes?
question, Linda. So, so is the process that we need to start with being on the local register for the city of Cortez, and then from there we go forward with the state registry? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I would encourage you to bring the materials back in time. City Council will approve them. You'll get a little certificate. We don't have any money for plaques, but once you're listed on the city register, then we will help you work with people at the Colorado State Historic Preservation Office as to how you go about. There's yet another form, of course, but the data that Angie has collected and that is in that site form that you received is the basis for moving forward to the Colorado registry. Now, as she pointed out, the difference is to be eligible for the city register, you have to be important, or your property or its owners have to be important to our local history. For the Colorado register, your property has to contribute to the broader patterns of history within the state of Colorado. And all of Angie's work was sent to the Colorado office, and they approved and agreed with her evaluation for what is on those forms. So therefore, it suggests that they would welcome an application for your properties. And again, we can set you up with the right person to talk to. And, you know, as Patricia said, we're both archaeologists, so we probably aren't too good at filling out the right, using the right terminology on the site forms, but the people are very helpful up there. And so we will continue to work with you. Jared had asked that question right at the beginning, but I would encourage you to get listed first on the city register, and then we'll work on getting you on the Colorado register.
Okay.
I want to address, go ahead.
Just another question. By being listed on the state registry, does that come with any restrictions? Say, for example, if you wanted to remodel the kitchen, or does that just have restrictions that are on the outside of the structure?
Well, I was just going to say, let me explain what goes on with the local register first. Once you are listed, because of the integrity of the architecture of your building and or its association with a person important to the history of Cortez, our board literally has no authority to tell you what to do. The ordinance does require that you come to our board if you are going to make major changes to the exterior of your building. Long ago, historic preservation in this country said, you can remodel bathrooms, you can remodel kitchens. They just knew that people who love older homes still have to be able to live in them in, you know, the modern day. Now let's assume that you wanted to put a pro-panel roof on your house, and you come to us and we go, you know, that really is not the best idea. Here's a whole bunch of other alternatives where you can still replicate what was there, but it meets modern standards for insulation and all this. So we would help you make decisions. But if you decided those people are crazy, I'm going to go and do what I want to do, and you change the building to the point that it lost the integrity for which it was listed, the only thing the Cortez board can do to you is say, sorry, we're taking you off the list. So we have no authority to tell you you can't do something. We can encourage you not to do something and give you some better ideas, but we in no way restrict what you can do to your property. Now, Angie was shaking her head that no, the Colorado standards can't tell you that either. I'm not as familiar with that. So if you'd like to jump in here, Angie, about what the state would expect.
The state's exactly the same. That they don't have any, their only thing would be if there was a local preservation ordinance that caused you to not do something. So Colorado's the same thing. It's all carrots and no sticks. They would want you to list your property, and they want you to keep it and with integrity. And if there's a tax credit associated with it, they're going to say, you know, you have to do it this way to get the tax credit. Otherwise, you can do whatever you want to. If you don't take the money, that's their hook, and that's it. So it's really easy and positive. They really, really want you to keep it, have it with integrity. So it's all about, you know, incentives. And nor the National Park Service has no different one. All of them are exactly the same. So if there's no local ordinance, the National Register doesn't have any prohibition against doing anything you want to. The only thing that can happen is you would be delisted.
And I would say, speaking of benefits, if once you're listed on the local register, you are eligible for state tax credits. But as Angie said, if you want to put a new roof on and it's in keeping with the historic character, I know nothing about tax credits, but there's a really smart guy up in Denver who knows about tax credits that we can put you in touch with. The federal tax credits do require, I believe, National Register listing. But the other benefit is that Colorado is unique in having a state historic fund, which will provide grants. If you're familiar with the project out at the Flume, we got 4 state historic fund grants to do the restoration on the Flume. If it's a private property, it does, however, require a 50% cash match. And again, the state tax credits may be more beneficial. So those are some benefits to being on just the local list, let alone being on the state register. More questions?
I was going to comment to Rachel that the Colorado wanted more documentation on your house, especially when was the porch added, when was the siding added, and possibly the windows. So there's more research that needs to be done just to make them comfortable with the integrity. So, and I wasn't able to do that in the scope of this survey. So, but it's a local thing that, you know, with past histories and people who know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good. Well, anything else from the Koskis? Anything else? No? Okay. It's sure nice to have you. It really helps when we have people come and visit the Historic Preservation Board. So good. And thank you, Angie, too. That was a lovely presentation.
Yes, thank you so
Jason.
much.
It's just very good. And Rachel, I hope that helps. Maybe we'll just have to have a cup of tea together and do it, okay, or see. And
That
then-
sounds great.
Okay. All right. And Tracy, anything? Any comments? Okay. All right.
Comments.
No comments. All right. Well, I think if you have any further questions, and if you're trying to fill out the form, it's pretty much all on your site form that you have as information. And I'd be happy to meet with any of you and we could fill out the form. And I think Neva the same way would help. Would you have? Yes. So Neva, and you can come right here to City Hall and she will help you, because most of the work has already been done, the research work on those site forms.
You know what? I will send Neva or anybody the PDFs of the assessor files on any house that you want me to send.
I think you mentioned that about Jerry's house. You said you had some good further information.
Yes,
Yeah, so that would be great.
it may benefit you to go back to the assessor and get new copies because he did it awfully hurriedly and some of the pages are kind of jammed. So,
But the
But-
information's there, so you collected that. That was the hard work. Yeah.
but it might behoove you to go back to the assessor right there downtown and get some new copies on some of them.
Well, these meetings are more fun in person, but we're doing the best we can. Maybe by the end of the next grant, things will be normal. Well, okay, looks like Patricia has ended the meeting, so I guess the rest of us can leave too.
I think
Can I?
Rachel,
Oh, go
Rachel
ahead.
had one more question, I think.
Yeah, okay, so Angie, so everything from the assessor's office was in this report?
Everything from this, no. It's summarized. You know, there are lots of things in those assessor forms, you know, about the dimensions, and they have little site forms about what were the construction things and stuff like that. So no, I didn't include it all, no.
Well, can you send the raw data as well to Rachel? I mean, she works for the county in GIS, so she's pretty familiar with what those records look like. I don't know if you've done your own research, but if Angie's already done some legwork, it might be a good place to start for you.
Yeah, if you could share anything with me, just email it to me, that'd be great. Thank you. At least this form.
Okay, I guess we're done. Thank you, everyone.
All right,
We'll
okay. Well, thank
see
you
you.
all.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all
happy
for
to
your,
do it.
thank you all for your hard work on this project. It's really appreciated.
Well, and Angie, we have another grant to do a plan for the whole city to decide where we should be inventorying next. And I'm sorry that Angie isn't going to be joining us on that project because, you know, she already knows her way around town and now we have to break somebody else in, but that's okay. Thank you for your work on the last two grants.
It's a pleasure, and I'm sorry about that grant.
It's okay. You were a big help in us getting the grant. I wouldn't have known what to write. Okay, thanks, everybody.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.